we've gone through tax cuts in the Bush years, and we did not have this booming growth that you've assumed. And the Congress has also been afraid, people have been afraid in Washington to take on the entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now, I want to know if you all are going to have the courage when you go there to take on the entitlement programs, or are we once again going to duck and see these costs go through the roof?
I'm the only one here who has talked about spending, and I've done it the entire campaign. You know why? Because spending is something that's difficult to cut. It's difficult to look at all of the people in the audience and say, you know what, we have to cut entitlement programs. And there's a lot of fat that we can trim at the same time. It's just the truth. We have to do it. We can't do it. The reason why nobody wants to talk about cutting spending is because it costs them votes. But you know what? Every single time you go out there and say, oh, I'm going to cut your taxes, I'm going to raise your entitlement programs, you're just lying to get votes. We have to cut spending. I would like to know what
Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, are you ready to cut them?
Where would I cut? Okay, first of all,
are you ready to take on the entitlement programs?
Yes, I am ready to take on the entitlement programs.
Okay,
I've said it before. I'll do it again.
Mr. Kennedy.
If we want to secure the people of America, we have to not say, you know, why are we at war with Al Qaeda? What we need to understand is, why is Al Qaeda at war with us? And the reality is, it's because we occupy nations in the Middle East. If you're growing up, if you're a little kid, and you've got somebody from a foreign nation walking up and down your streets with a machine gun, you're going to grow up hating that country. You're just going to. And then when you turn 15, 16, 17, it's going to be very easy to recruit you to come over and kill us. That's what's happening. That's what's happened again and again. The reality is, if we want a safer country, what we need to do is we need to not occupy these lands. We need to take and pull back the individuals who are deployed over there today. We need to take some of the money that is used to pay for that deployment and use that money internally to secure our borders. If we actually focused on securing America and didn't go over there and interfere in all of these people's lives, we would have fewer enemies, and we would be concentrating our forces where we need them, which is in America.
Okay. And that is, we're going to allow each candidate, this is unusual, allow each candidate a chance to ask the other two candidates a question and get a minute-long response. I've just been informed, given the time constraints, we're going to move to one question. I'm going to ask Mr. Kennedy if he would pose a question to either one of the two candidates.
Okay. Ms. Coakley, a very simple question for you. We have a health care bill in front of us that will cost $1.2 trillion. Right now, the total amount of money that is raised on a yearly basis by all taxes that come in via the federal income tax is at $1.08 trillion. So this is over a 10-year period. Are you willing to increase taxes on everyone 11% to pay for this health care bill, because that's what it costs, and it won't be able to be done by just taxing the wealthy?
No, because I disagree with the premises and the facts in your question, Joe. I appreciate that. I think everybody appreciates that health care needs reform and that it's complicated, and we can stand here all night and throw numbers around and argue about it, but what it requires is getting down and figuring out, as we did in Massachusetts, and we look at costs, and as we go forward on the national level, we can't afford not to do health care reform. So we can figure out how we have to pay for it, what we will save by early prevention, early screenings, the ways in which we turn around how we pay for these services. We pay far too much for the results that we get in health care.
Just to go on the record, the numbers that I'm giving you are numbers from the government, and they're from the Tax Foundation. So
and the Congressional Budget Office says that within 10 years it will be deficit neutral, it'll be budget neutral, and we will see the kinds of things that we want out of this, not just these dollars and cents on this side of the ledger. We will see people who now don't have insurance get it, so the cost will be down. They won't be in the emergency rooms. We'll see the people who pay out of their pockets to get screenings that insurance companies won't pay for, and then they need less invasive procedures, as a friend of mine found out, so the insurance company saves money on her while she pays $3,000 for a screening test. Our system is upside down, it's wrong-headed, and it doesn't take care of the people that it's supposed to. And we can do it, get better results, and save money. We're not going to do it overnight. I agree with that.
There are some who wondered whether you've, as a front runner, sometimes been a little complacent, but you're now sort of catching fire. And I wonder, in looking back, whether you think it was the right decision to insist on three people in a debate, given the fact when John Kerry campaigned for this office, he said, no, I'll do it one-on-one. When Teddy Kennedy campaigned for this office, he said, no, I'll do it one-on-one. What about you?
I think it was a very good decision, and I think that Joe, as you can see tonight, has added a lot to the debate, has added a lot to the discussion, and the position has always been, as I'm familiar with debates here in Massachusetts, is that people who are on the ballot should be able to get up when it's a public-sponsored debate and have voters judge them as they would Scott or me or anyone else who gets the signatures to get on the ballot. We've had plenty of opportunity, as you can see tonight, to go one-on-one on issues. There are lots of ways in which voters did get to compare us. But in a public forum, sponsored on television that everyone has access to, I think it makes a lot of sense.
As you look back on the campaign, do you have any second thoughts about the way the campaign's unfolded?
Absolutely not. You know, campaigns are not dress rehearsals. They move forward at their own pace and dynamic. We had a tough primary. We worked hard every day on that in many ways. We're doing the same thing in this. We're taking nothing for granted. We've worked very hard. I did take Christmas Day off. I think voters probably didn't want to hear from me on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. But to suggest that somehow I'm taking this for granted or not working hard, you can look at our policy papers on the website. You can look at our volunteers. You can look at the phone calling. I don't know what's going to happen on January 19th, but I'm asking voters to vote for one of the three of us, hopefully me, and I'm working very hard day and night, as my campaign and all our volunteers are, to make sure we get our message out.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, briefly, you've run a tough, hard campaign, but you're in a situation now where you're coming down to the final days and you're still pretty far back. If you were not to win, do you have a preference between these two candidates as to which one you would like to see win?
So in all honesty, I think that the most important thing here, and I will answer your question. I think the most important thing that we do here as a third-party candidate is to get the message out. None of these two candidates has been willing to talk about spending, and if they can't talk about spending, then we can't really have any intelligent discussions around the economy. And essentially, I will wait. You know, my answer would be whoever can actually start talking about cutting of spending. Neither one of them has been willing to do so. But who I would support would be the person who, whenever they decide to, starts being realistic about what's going on with the economy and talk about cutting spending.
In terms of answering the question, do you have one that's closer to your model than the other?
I honestly think that Scott at least talks about cutting taxes, which is part of the way there. My issue with Scott is essentially that last year he had the opportunity when we had the referendum to cut the income tax. He's been calling for across-the-board tax cut. We had the opportunity last year. He publicly came out against it, and it was voted down. That's $3,700 that could have gone out to everybody, and he voted it down. A year later, now that he's running, he's calling for the exact same thing that he didn't want to have a year ago in the same economic conditions. How do voters trust it? I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to turn to one final question to each of you, and then you'll have a chance for a closing statement. And this is about, it's more personal in nature, and that is, as in traveling the state and talking to people in the press, talking to voters, there's a common refrain, that is that people sense they knew Senator Ted Kennedy very well as a human being. He was senator for a long time. He had a chance to get to make a lot of personal connections. And they have a lot of respect for the three of you. They all think you're nice people, but they don't sense they know you very well. And they've had a hard time penetrating. Could you tell us, getting beyond what you've said in your advertising and your stump speeches, could you give us a sort of a personal insight into what you would like the voters to go into the polls thinking who you are as a person, starting with Ms. Coakley?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, David, and part of it is we are constrained by these forum. You know, I'm pleased. My husband Tom is here with me tonight, my sister Mary, my sister Ann, my brother-in-law Kevin, my nephew Joe. I come from